Great. So, greeting students. Today, our voice of search is Colin. Is it Colin?
Colin.
Colin Hayhurst, and he is the CEO of Mojeek Limited. And I bumped into Colin at a University of Maryland webinar where he kind of blew my mind in terms of a few different things, which will come up in a minute. So I'll tell you a little bit about him from his bio, and then I'll also tell you a little bit about why I invited him here in a minute. So Colin, as I said, is the CEO of Mojeek Limited, and Mojeek is a fully remote company with its roots in the UK. He heads up a dynamic team who are working hard to ensure there's true choice in the search independence of big tech. I think I said that wrong. Colin has a vast array of entrepreneurial experience within the tech world with proven commercial and technical experience in startups, academia, and industry. He's been a co-founding CEO of CTO of 3 startups in high-performance computing, in web infrastructure, and machine learning, respectively. His international business experience is predominantly in the UK, Europe, and the USA, including the Y Combinator 2012 summer cohort, which I know nothing about. But welcome, Colin. And I want to tell you how excited I am about Mojeek, and especially when I read the About page, it confirmed how excited I was. So on the About page of this search engine, the search engine writes, or the team behind it writes, that's why we're on a mission to build the world's alternative search engine, a search engine that does what's right, that values and respects your privacy, whilst providing its own unique and unbiased search results. So what I understand about Mojeek is that it presents options for independent search. It does not track. It values privacy. It has a large index, which is independently crawled and built, unlike some search services we'll be exploring. And it uses its own algorithms. So, Colin, tell us a little bit about what's behind Mojeek and why our LIS students need to know about it, or need to know about search beyond the 2 major search engines that everybody knows.
Okay. Yes. Well, thanks for that very kind and excellent introduction. And yeah, it's great to have looking forward to this chat. So yeah, I should probably talk a little about the history of Mojeek, because I think I'll bring in some of these issues. So Mojeek was actually started in 2004 as a hobby by our founder Mark, who still works every hour of the day on Mojeek, and he was concerned about what he saw happen with Google back then, and but actually he was more motivated. He wanted to learn. He was a programmer, but he hadn't done C, so I thought I need a project to learn C on. So he thought I'd start writing a search engine. And it quickly turned into an obsession, which he still has. So he developed it for pretty much on his own for 5 years. He put it up in the same year, 2004, and had users from the beginning. He ran it out of his bedroom for quite a few years, 2 servers, 2 computers. And then in 2009, he actually, sort of friend said, look, you've got quite a lot of users now across the world. You really, you need to think a bit bigger. And so he introduced him to somebody who put in a bit of money, which allowed Mark to move into a data center with more servers.
Out of the bedroom.
Out of the bedroom into a data center. And so he moved it into a data center. Actually, I can't remember how many servers it was then, but it's still the same independent data center company that we use now. Although nowadays we're their biggest customer. We have our own big secure room with lots of racks. So yeah, and basically so then it turned into a project to try and build up something more serious. Now I'm taking a long time to explain this, but I think we're probably going to cover a lot of the things you're interested in here. Mark, from the very start, he's based on his own views about things. Is that from the very start he didn't do any tracking, and what he found, very early, he noticed that people were making medical searches on Mojeek, and he realized that they were probably people were coming from Google, having put in a search, and then and were coming putting medical searches in Mojeek. So he actually, although he'd never tracked anyway, he then sort of made a statement, which you can still see on the archive, in 2006, saying, "Look, we do not track, and we will not track." And we're very strict on that. I mean, we literally. So or maybe we'll come back to that, because otherwise I'm going to talk for 50 minutes. So ask me about the tracking later on, because I think that's important.
Will do.
Yeah, so that makes us. So that's the one thing that makes us different, obviously, from let's say the big search engines, Google, Bing, Baidu, Yandex, and so on. And Mark, was doing that. He was the first what people now call privacy search engines. And so Startpage started doing the same thing, or saying they were doing the same thing soon afterwards, and then DuckDuckGo came along later on. Obviously, we'll come back and talk about DuckDuckGo and Startpage and others, because actually they are very different companies and propositions to Mojeek. Because Mojeek, as I'm trying to explain, has been built from the ground up, so we don't use anybody else's index. And that means that you will get completely different results on Mojeek as well. So you get total privacy, you get completely different results. And I guess another thing we can dip into is we also try to give users more control, as much control as we can, over how they get the results. So we think autonomy for users is important. So in terms of if you're doing searching for information, you need diversity. You need some autonomy, some control of what results you're going to get, and obviously a lot of people have always needed privacy, and people are becoming increasingly aware of that need. So that's what we're trying to do. So I should probably stop there, and you can decide where to take this next choice.
Okay, I don't know if this will divert too much, but when you're talking, I think when people think of a privacy search engine, DuckDuckGo is probably the first one, and does it have its own index, or is that one of the ones that is reliant on Google's index, for instance?
No, so DuckDuckGo largely uses Bing from Microsoft.
Bing, okay.
It wasn't the first one at all. I think it was 2009. It was far from being the first one. So Mojeek was the first one, then Startpage, then been some others before DuckDuckGo. I mean, obviously DuckDuckGo is the one that's become most prominent, and they've done a fantastic job in terms of marketing their search service. And they have what can I say? They've been very clever in giving the impression that they have their own index. Now they do index some things, but it's only a very limited part of the web. And actually, they use APIs, so they use the Stack Overflow API. They use
So yeah. You're labeling it a search service because it doesn't have its own index, correct?
No, so that's a good question. So let's clarify things. The way
and if you could explain an API to my students as well, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. So we would call a search engine a search engine that actually crawls, indexes, and then ranks those results from the web. Okay. We would call a search proxy, and I would call DuckDuckGo is a search proxy, where they actually take the results provided by a search engine and provide us a web service on the front, or search service, which allows the user to use that search product. Okay, so you have a search engine. So let's keep it simple. Let's say obviously there are other ones, but there aren't many. We could actually go through all of them, but we've got Google, we've got Bing, and we've got Mojeek. There's a very small one called Gigablast in the US. They're the only 4 in US and Europe. Okay, and now they actually crawl the web. They form their own index, and then they have their own ranking algorithms. And all 4 of them then have what's called an API, an application programming interface, which allows other companies or individuals to actually access the search results. So you could set up a program, a web interface, and send a request to our API or to the Bing API and say, give me the search results for whatever your search query is, and then the search API would send back those 10 results, typically 10 results to you, or whatever you request, in JSON or XML, the data, and then you can choose how you want to display that data, the JSON or XML, in your user interface, which is your web service. So to repeat, so search engines index and crawl the web. There's very few of those. Search proxies, of which I haven't done the latest count, there's probably over 100. There's like a new one every week. They're actually calling to the APIs of the search engines. And then, in a sense, everybody has search services that, a web service which serves up the results to people. Now, I mean, there are other search services which aren't even a proxy. So there's a lot of what goes on is that there are people who actually scrape the results from search engines and search services and actually try pretend as if, and look like a search engine. So there's lots. So I'm sure Google get an enormous amount of people doing that on theirs. It happens to us. Yeah. People even scrape DuckDuckGo, even though it's not a search engine. So you could have a search engine which is not even a proxy. It's just somebody scraping, avoiding using the API and paying for the API and pretending to be a search engine. Mm-hmm. And then just to finish, I guess the other definition which I talked about, which I'm sure you've heard, you don't hear it very often nowadays because it used to be more popular. It's called meta search.
Yeah.
That would be where typically that would be a proxy where you're bringing in meta search. You're bringing in results from multiple. Suppose so Bing and Google and Mojeek. Now the reason you don't hear about that anymore much nowadays is because I don't know what the current status is, so I might get this wrong, but as I understand, I don't think generally Microsoft and Google allow you to mix together results from so you've either got to use one or the other. If somebody wants to use Mojeek and one of the others, that's fine with us, but that used to be done more in the past, but you can't do that.
I mean, I remember that in the old days when we were looking also at directories. So it would incorporate the hierarchies and the subjects for something like Ask Jeeves or Yahoo, as well as Google. And then there was a little variety because some of them really weren't search engines, and you were leveraging the human knowledge that was involved with those creations.
So DuckDuckGo is largely using Bing. So let's name a few because that might be helpful. So Startpage is using Google. They used to be called IXQuick. There aren't many people using Google. So trying to remember Ask, which used to be Ask Jeeves, is using Google. I think I can't remember the top of my head. There's not many using Google. There's for Bing, there's Yahoo. Obviously, Yahoo had its own search engine for a long time. That's now all Bing. You've got things like Ecosia. What else? You've got.
I could bring up my screen if you want to take a peek at that while we look at that.
Why not? Yeah.
Okay. So this is. Whoops. Sorry.
So let's go down that. So Wolfram Alpha. Now Wolfram Alpha is really kind of a different animal. I guess let's not
right
that. So Yippee is closed down. Ask is Google. Million Short. Actually, I can't remember. I think that's Bing, but I'm not entirely sure. Like Dogpile, I think is an old meta search engine.
That wasn't. Yes, that was definitely a meta search.
Right. So obviously Amazon's got their own technologies. Quant is largely Bing. They do Quant also claim to do a lot of indexing. I'm sure they do some indexing, but I think the last I understood it's mostly just sites in France because they've got all the funding from the French government.
And I've included some outliers here, so you can ignore those.
Yeah, it's fine. But this is interesting. So IXQuick, Startpage, you mentioned Yandex. So Yandex. So they do have their own. Obviously, that's the Russian search engine.
So that is a search engine. Okay.
Yeah. Carrot 2 is that's an interesting one.
That's a search and a clustering search, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's an example, Colin. So an example of an API, for instance, would be one that uses the results from Google to cluster and in some way use artificial intelligence perhaps to group searches into buckets.
No, I think clustering is a clustering is a separate thing. Think of clustering as a different approach to ranking. So most of the search engines will rank 1 to 10 in order. Clustering is just a different way of displaying the information. So so think of it as different ranking. So Swiss cows is Bing, I think I remember. Shodan, I don't know. Start page, PQ, I can't remember. Or CRX. So CRX is so that's a kind of meta search which is based on open source. There's all sorts of instances. You need to be a programmer to use it. People kind of love it because it's open source, but from our point of view, it's although we love open source, we'd love to support it. It's a bit of a nuisance because essentially they're typically trying to get results from us for free and scraping us and so on. So I'm sure they do a lot more of that with Google. Base, I can't remember. Listen Notes is a podcast search one, so that's a kind of what else I could go down. Gigablast. Okay. Gigablast is an interesting one. So that's a one-man. Matt Wells, who's in New Mexico, I can't remember. I think he's been going a bit longer than Mojeek, and so Gigablast is the only one that's truly a search engine which doesn't track. So Mojeek and Gigablast are in, a different proposition. So
gotcha. Okay.
I think we've probably covered. Yeah, we've covered enough.
All right, I'll stop sharing then. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. And I'll wipe beauty out.
So we have a little. There's a lot of misunderstandings about this, and particularly in the last couple of years, people have done all sorts of lists about this. I mean, I can share some resources afterwards. Or
one thing that interests my students, and I think that everybody in the K-12 arena has been looking for a search engine for children, but there really has never been one. The best you do is safe search, right? Yeah, and then use an API from there. But that's not really a search engine for kids. Most of the stuff that's been created has either been getting and filtering Google results or creating some kind of directory.
Yeah.
So, Colin, how do students or how does anybody keep track of what's going on in the search world? You've already looked at my stuff and said, oh, these are not there anymore, or this is that and that. How do we create a schema for understanding this or know what's out there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there is a growing number of resources and bloggers and people who are putting out details out there, but it's very thin. The search engine companies aren't really,
there's no motivation for them to do this.
No. I mean, we're doing what we can, but we're a very small team, right? So
you mentioned Search Engine Map.
Yeah. So Search Engine Map is a resource we have, which will show the relationships between search engines and search proxies. So in a simple visual way, there's a few articles. There are all sorts of lists on things like there's a project called DGoogle. There's a lot of lists, but there isn't really kind of one good place to go. There's one good article. It's a long URL. I think it's on like the URL is SERDY1.
I think it's the one. It's called Search Engines with Their Own Indexes. Is that the one you're talking about?
The one, yeah. Okay. Yes. So that article, in my opinion, and I feel very strongly about this, it's the best article that's independent, because you've got to be careful when you see articles. Sometimes they're paid by people, right?
It looks independent. It's got no branding.
I mean, as far as I know, Rohan, who does it, he's totally independent. He's a very he's a developer. He knows his stuff. He's very intelligent, and he's done his good research. And the point is, it's all not only, I think it's a good depth. It's a good balance between having deep enough but not going too deep. And the point is that it's very up to date. So there'll be articles on there which, if they're 2-3 years old, then they could be also out of date. So, but that's by far the best.
I noticed he puts a date for his updates on that document, and it seems that he continues to do that.
So, if you want to, if people who are interested in understanding the difference between search engines and proxies and the various other things, I mean, I've talked about it here. That's a good place to go, because in that case, I've been very broad brush and said DuckDuckGo is a proxy. Now, actually, DuckDuckGo does do a bit of indexing, right? And Hunt does a bit of indexing, but it's not, mostly isn't. But he actually gives some text on each of those. So, like Brave Search is an interesting one, gets very complicated because they're not very transparent on what they're doing, but they don't. What can I say? I mean, he views it. He terms it, I think it's probably the way to do it. It's kind of semi-independent index. So they're not doing crawling, indexing and ranking in the way that Mojeek, Google and Bing are doing it. So what they're doing is they're using data from click query data. They have a big database to actually say, well, what have people been interested in? So, and then we'll go and index that, and we don't know how they're indexing that. We think they're using their browser to actually, as a headless browser, to actually get the content. So here's the interesting thing is, like, they don't have an API, so that tells you a lot, right? And they don't have a bot. They don't have a name bot, right? So one of the biggest challenges in building a search engine is that you need to have your bot. Your bot can get blocked, right? Because obviously, how do you tell whether it's a search engine or somebody trying to scrape your data? So, but Brave don't have a bot. So, like, how are they indexing without a bot? I know, but I'm not going to say it.
Okay. Okay. I wanna move into, thank you, because I think this context and your definitions are going to be so helpful for my students, because I think most of us are newbies at this. We go into it, we are searchers, but we don't think about the tools we're using, and we don't have tools for understanding what the whole scene looks like. And few of us have looked at documents like the ones you just described. But back to Mojeek and what the why behind it. When you talked about it at the University of Maryland webinar, you described principles that guide the development and your day-to-day operations. Could you mention those to my students? And I think they also function as things to look for as we guide users, patrons, and students in the library world.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, we tend to think about, I suppose there's three principles that I would talk about, but also what's important to also is privacy. So, but I kind of guess people always talking about privacy, but we think of search as being more than about privacy. With Mojeek, we want to provide a private search engine, but it's about more than that. So as I said, it's diversity and autonomy as well as privacy. So I won't talk about privacy. I'll talk about the other things. So so the three things, the two principles we have is information neutrality. The second one is data minimization, and then I suppose it's a kind of a whole set of principles. We're kind of we're guided by what I call international human rights. So like the freedom to seek, right? It's an important right. Privacy is a right, but so
it sounds like we know what that means, the freedom to seek, but what does it really mean, and how are we not aware of our lack of freedom to seek?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, isn't it? A big one question. So I mean, this is the thing. Everybody talks about freedom of speech nowadays, right? It's all over the news. We're all talking about it. We're all throwing things at each other about it. But the freedom to seek is still is also important and never talked about. And I mean, it's I'm going to call out Google here. It's not because it's Google. It's any company that's monopolizing search on the web is a problem, right? Because it's like it's actually in the UK it's higher than US, by the way. But we've got more than 90% of people. If they're searching for stuff on the web, obviously people search in platforms, but on the web they go to Google, right? And even people go to Mojeek, right? There's we have to make thousands of different design decisions about how we develop maintain and present the search results, right? And Google do the same, right? So it concerns me that we're essentially all in. I mean, do we use the term bubble or echo chamber? I mean, we're being guided down. Look, this is the way you should look at the world by one company.
So with Google, we're looking at only 300 basically search results. We're not getting the full scope, and sometimes the thing we really need is below the first page or the first 10 pages.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a search, you're gonna typical search. I mean, I don't know what the average is. There's probably going to be millions of results, 10 million results perhaps, right? And hardly anybody looks past the first 10, right? So what shows in the top 10 is determined by choices made by Google engineers and their algorithms, right? So they're shaping your life. I mean, the way I like to think of it as an analogy, and I would say this, right, because we're competing with Google and we're competing with Bing and with Bing proxies. But, it's like, can you imagine a world where we only had two news channels, which were CNN and Fox News?
Yeah.
Would that be good?
Not so much. Not so much. So how does Mojeek mitigate this?
Yeah, well, good question. I mean, obviously we're mitigating it by being another option. So you will get very different results on Mojeek. I would love for us to be there are ways that we could actually allow users to rank things in a different way. Maybe we could do clustering and things like that. There's a load of different things I'd love us to do, but we're a small team trying to compete with huge companies, so we do what we can. I mean, I guess the interesting thing that which we have released, right, which is useful, I think, is we've introduced this thing called search choices, which is a bit like probably some people might have heard of the DuckDuckGo have what they call bangs. So with DuckDuckGo, you can say like !G search query, and then it'll go direct to Google and give you the searches. So we've done a similar thing in a different way, where you can put it in your search query, and then you can click a button on any one of, I think we've currently got 9 choices of search engines. So if you do a search query on Mojeek, you can, and you're not happy with the results, you can then go and click on one of 9 buttons to go to 9 other. So you can go to Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, Ecosia. I mean, we're going to expand that so you can add your own choices and things. But so you can even do that in Mojeek even before you start. So you can say put the search query in and hit the button even before you see Mojeek search results. So we actually, basically that's to provide people diversity. So I think I guess we have the advantage because we're using search every day. We kind of know, I know what search engines are particularly good for. So I will put in some queries. I know I'll go to Ecosia, or I might go to Google, or obviously I use Mojeek a lot, right? So, I mean, if you want to be stark about it, it's about censorship. It's about bias. It's about companies making choices about what should rank highly or not. I mean, so Google and Microsoft are making are definitely taking things down now, and they are ranking things down, which they haven't done it. Well, I don't know, right? But I'm pretty sure they haven't done in the past. So they're making decisions about what information we see. Probably by the fact that we're in an information war, you could argue, right? So that, I think that's where the freedom seek thing comes in. It's a tricky one.
So you're saying Mojeek does not take down anything based on political stance, or?
No, exactly. Yeah, we're apolitical. So we obviously we deal. We take down what's called CSAM, so child sexual abuse material. Obviously we take down terrorist related material. We actually take we deal with sites that are deliberately gaming search engines. That's not just Mojeek, right? There's because people actually try to exploit the way what they know or assume they know about the ranking algorithms, very deliberately. And then the last one is malware. So we don't want our users being steered to a site where there's malware. So that's but you know, if it's anything to do with politics or opinion or something like that, you know, if it's, I guess if it's you know, if it's legal, well, you know, it's not for us to make those decisions.
That's refreshing. Okay, so we looked at freedom to seek. What principles are we missing?
Okay, well, well, I haven't talked about the two, which are information neutrality and data minimization. So they're much easier to talk about and simpler, I think. So, okay, so firstly, so information neutrality. So, I mean, there is a formal definition which, you know, you actually might want to share with your students and the listeners, but they which I'm providing the reference for. But essentially, what it says is that you know, or the way we put it in terms of when it comes to search is that, you know, two people making the same search at the same time, location, and language, you know, there's the same settings, you know, should get the same results. Okay, so we are anti-personalization. Okay, so, you know, so if me and somebody who's doing the search next to me, right, puts the same search and has got a different, you know, they shouldn't get different results.
There's no filter bubble.
No personalization. I mean, personalization is I mean, you know, it has its. I do recognize it has its benefits because it's obviously done and said, you know, it's done in the name of convenience. And yes, okay, you probably do get more useful results faster. Okay, but okay. So there are two corollaries, right? It's also it means that they can. If you use personalization, then there's going to be a temptation, and, you know, I don't know if this happens. There's going to be temptation to adjust the results to suit your views on what people should see or want to see. Okay, but irrespective of that, even, you know, that's conjecture. Even irrespective of that, the point is to do that personalization. This is where all the tracking comes in. You know, because to do that personalization, you would need to harvest data on people. You know, figure out what their interests are. You know, what their, you know, what kind of things that value to them, so on. So it's, you know, it underpins all the data harvesting, which we're totally against. So yeah, so it's, and that really moves us on to the next principle, which is data minimization, right? Which is our principle, if you like, for our no tracking principle. I mean, these things are very complicated. We don't use these terms in our marketing materials because people go, data minimization, well, that's a bit difficult. So we just say, you know, we say no tracking, just search. Okay, by no tracking, what we mean is, well, use data minimization. So the idea with the data minimization is you only collect or and log and store what data, the minimum you need in order to provide the service that you're doing, right? So as far as we're concerned, we can provide relevant search queries based on the search query, the phrases, typically your location and language, because they're obviously key things. Well, obviously you're putting it at a certain time, so that the time is implicit, and that's pretty much it. Now you can, it's different in different search engines. In Mojeek, you can change. You can say where you want to be. You can be searching from the US and say, I want to do research as if I'm in France or something. So that's easy to do. You can change to a different language. But obviously we change the results based on that for obvious reasons. But that's it. So we don't know. We do collect data on what's called the user agent, which, in simple terms is your browser. And that's because we need that information just to serve up, to do the things correctly in the right browser. But that data actually goes into a different log. So all the data we use goes into different logs. Now the other thing we monitor, but we don't collect, we essentially is IP addresses. So this is the IP address is the big one. Okay, so obviously IP addresses can identify you. What we do with IP addresses, we take the IP address, we use them to check. We over 90% of our searches are automated bots. So we're checking IP addresses for that. Okay. that's a big challenge of search engines. Okay, but what we do once it's gone through that process, we literally get rid of it, and we convert the IP address into a country code. So because we keep logs on what countries our search engines been used in. So, but that's it. So we don't know anything. I mean, some companies, I won't name names, and I can't prove it, but other companies claim not to keep the IP addresses, but I know that they keep parts of the IP address.
Okay.
Okay, and obviously, this thing called fingerprinting. If you take a part of an IP address and you take a location, you can start to figure out if you wanted to where they are. But so for us, so for us, it's IP address thrown away. As soon as you've done the bot checking, we just keep the country code, search query, location, language, browse the user agent, that goes into separate logs, and that's it. And then okay, I guess I should have made this clear. But we don't. So Mojeek is used without signing. So we don't know who's using Mojeek. We don't have any signing process. So we don't have any IP. You don't have any email addresses, any phone numbers, or anything.
Okay. Okay, so have we covered the principles? Because what I'm going to do is label them in our video.
I think we've covered them, yeah.
All right, so what's next, Colin? What's the 5-year plan for Mojeek?
Oh, what's next for Mojeek? Okay, so we just passed 6 billion pages, so that's a big milestone for us. We put in 100 more servers a couple of months ago to do that. We can now kind of grow it, keep growing faster with that extra 100 servers. Yeah. So we've just recently we've had a very simple news product for quite a few years, but it only covered UK sources, and it was only a few sources, but we expanded that out recently. But more importantly, we've rebuilt the news product at the back end, so that we can then expand it out. So we will be adding US news sources, in the coming months. So that'll be expanded out. We've been working for quite a long time on maps. So we have maps working. I think we've only released it in the UK yet, because for business listings. So if you search for a business, you also get a map, and that we haven't. We're working on doing that for the US, but we're quite a long way in terms of building our own global map system. So you'll be able to do a map search on, and that's been built again from the ground up. So that's why it's taken us a lot of time. It turns out it's actually not too bad to do maps for a small country like the UK, but it's a bit more tricky for the US, and for the whole world, it takes a bit of extra work. So
it does sound like folks need to know where to go for what. So if one of the messages I suspect we want to leave our students with here is that if you are looking for the principles that we were talking about right now, Mojeek is a fine place to go. If you're looking for, in the United States, if you're looking for the best pizza in your local town, maybe not so much. But, it's that a whole awareness that these tools are out here and we need to leverage them in the best way possible for our information needs. And we need to be conscious of the fact that search engines, for the most parts, the ones that we're most familiar with, are businesses. And whatever we're getting, we're also giving. We're giving parts of ourselves, we're giving parts of our personal information, and we may not be getting the full picture as we search. Is there a final message that you might want to leave that I didn't include in that?
There was one thing I didn't talk about, which I think is an important one, is we released a couple of months ago a big project for us, this thing called Mojeek Focus. So that allows you to basically say, look, I want to do a search, but across these 20 websites, so not across the whole web. So this is actually a big one in terms of, if you want, I think this will help a lot for people looking for information to get diversity, because if you do a search across the whole web, then the results you might want to see might be on page 5. You never see them, right? But if you have an idea where are the likely sources for it, you can say, okay, here's my list of sites. Now search for the for that text on these 10, 20 sites or whatever.
Can you can you save that as a search that can be redone?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Can you embed the search? Like, I'm thinking about Google's programmable search, which is something that I find really useful with my students. Yeah. So I can do that in Mojeek?
Yes. So it's quite similar to programmable search. I would say it's, we tried to make it a bit more user friendly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a similar principle. I mean, I think okay. Well, I will say I want to comment on what Google are doing, because I don't actually know. But with Mojeek, when you set up a focus, what we call focus templates. So I mean, I've got about 12 of them. You're actually searching across the whole index of Mojeek, right? So everything's there. I mean, with Mojeek, it's also very useful it helps, on certain types of searches. So, for instance, we don't. I mean, to give an example, if you wanted to search for recipes in Mojeek and in Google, I mean, being honest, you're probably going to get better results in Google, perhaps. Although actually, it might be dominated by SEO articles, right? Particular brands. If you do it in Mojeek, you'll probably get some interesting results and some what I call, more enthusiastic long tail things. But we like, for instance, we set up a recipes template which covers, like, I don't know, 10, 20 good recipe sites which aren't full of noise. They actually have good recipes, good content down. So you can there's a lot of utility searches. So I use it for doing like dictionary searches, because we don't have a lot of instant answers. So dictionary searches and time and video searches. So we don't have video searches, but I use that for searching across all the video sites. So
I love that.
It's very useful.
Yeah, I often create them across repositories for primary sources, right. And for children's search. If I want students to find information on animals, I'll get all the zoos and aquariums and natural science museums and put them in a search, so they're not getting the noise, and they're getting successful searches with 1 or 2 words.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. Yeah, there's not a lot of people know about Google programmable search. It's almost like they don't want to publicize it.
Well, it is also laden, unless you work on proving yourself a nonprofit, then it's laden with ads.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, I am really excited to share our talk with my students, Colin. Unless there's anything else you want to add, I think we covered so much. I'm so grateful for your time.
Well, thank you. Yeah, pleasure talking, and thanks for the opportunity. And it's
then with.
Okay.
So I'm going to cut this part. Just mention that again, and it's been assigned to my students for examination. But okay,